Hey everybody, welcome to the Friday night 3D printing community hangout. We're back again after taking a little bit of a summer break. We've got welcome to the Friday night 3D printing community hangout. Forgot to mute a little bit of YouTube. As I was saying, we're back again this week with a special guest. We have Mitch and Derek from Mosaic Manufacturing, the creators of the Palette 2, and the Palette 2 Pro, as well as Canvas Slicer, which is the main focus tonight and why we brought Mosaic back on. We had them back in August or September of 2018 with the announcement of the Palette, and we figured it's a good time to do a little bit of a follow-up. They've just recently, in the last month or so, released the new paint features that everybody's been waiting for Canvas, to be able to paint right directly on your 3D model and then print it out in multicolor on your palette. So tonight we're doing things a little bit different. Normally we would have been last week for the US stream. Because of schedule conflicts, we bumped it 1 week so that we could have Mosaic come on for the return stream. Next week we're going to be doing a show and tell live. Sort of a little bit of the model of what Community Ketchup does, except we're going to bring the makers directly on the stream live, and on that stream we'll only end up having one or two panelists to ask questions, as well as fielding questions from the chat. So that's just a little bit of an update on the Friday night hangouts and the relaunch or return of the streams. If you have questions throughout the stream, please feel free to type them in the chat. Tag at Friday 3D Printing Community Hangout or mcrisp1, correct, Chris?
mcrispy1.
mcrispy1.
Come on, Matt.
In the chat, Chris and I will be watching for those tags so that we catch your question. And depending on the nature of the question and what we're talking about with Mosaic, we may ask the questions right away from the chat, or we may hold some questions towards the end. Mosaic's going to do a little bit of a demonstration for us tonight. So let's go ahead and not delay things any longer. Let's go down through the panelists and do introductions. We'll start off with Chris.
Hey everybody, Chris here. Follow me on Twitter at mcrispy1, or more importantly these days, as we're just 84 days away from it, at EARF 2018. EARF 2019 is just 84 days away, so we'll see you all soon. And one of the groups we will see at EARF, I'm proud to say, is Mosaic. They're coming back for their second year, and that's what we're talking about tonight.
All right, thanks, Chris. Next up, we've got Pooch.
What's up, everybody? I'm Alan Puccinelli. I have a little company called Repcord. Everybody knows me as Pooch. I am Repcord on all the things, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. And I'm looking forward to doing some palette convo tonight.
All right, thanks, Pooch. Next up, we've got Sean.
Hi, everybody. I was muted. My name is Sean Renna. I am Art Mods on everything pretty much, or Art Mods Official, and that is my personal thing, but I am the new community manager over at PO Poly. So yeah, that is, you can find us at PO Poly on everything. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Sean. And that takes us to our guests. Mitch, I'll go ahead and let you take over at this point.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So I'm Mitch DeBora. I am one of the co-founders of Mosaic Manufacturing, along with one of my co-founders, Derek.
Hey, I'm Derek, one of the co-founders of Mosaic as well. And we're really excited to be here to talk about Canvas specifically, Canvas Paint, some new functionality that we brought there, and talk about how that sort of works into the multicolor palette 3D printing workflow.
Yeah. So as Matt said, something really big happened a few weeks ago. Canvas came out with some really cool features that we want to not only talk about, but actually go through. But as you also said, we will definitely be at EARF. So I assume everyone on the stream will be there as well. So we'll look forward to seeing you. And Chris, we have to talk about something cool that we can do in addition to just having a booth. We should do something fun, maybe with a bunch of palettes or something. So I made a note today actually to call you to talk about that. EARF is going to be awesome.
You let me know. I'm all ears.
Okay. And Pooch, I had no idea your last name was Puccinelli. I just, in your email, I always saw Pooch and assumed there must have been a funny story, but you learn a lot in these things. So
Yeah, no, you can't have a name like Puccinelli and not have people figure that one out.
I love it. Awesome. Okay, so let's dive right in. If anyone doesn't know sort of why we exist or why we existed until recently, it was all about palette. And we're actually at my home right now, so I don't have a palette on me. I feel ill-prepared, but I think that, Chris, do you have one behind you, or Alan, do you? There it is.
Mine.
Okay. So for anyone who isn't aware, I'm assuming everyone on the stream has a 3D printer, and you're used to printing things in a single color or a single filament. Palette is a product that allows the printer to print in multiple colors, multiple materials. So for example, Alan there is printing on what looks like a CR10, maybe?
It's a close relative. It's a Sidewinder X1.
Okay, gaining popular, the Sidewinder. And so with Palette, the Sidewinder can then print models in different colors and different materials like water-soluble TPU. We've been doing that for 5 years now. We just celebrated 5 years last month.
Wow.
And at first, it was all about, thank you. At first, it was all about letting people print in color, allowing printers to print in color. And Palette is compatible with almost every printer in the market. So now we've done that, and we'll keep doing that better and better over time. But the thing that people kept on telling us was, I'm out of things to print. There's only a couple hundred models on Thingiverse or My Mini Factory that are multicolor, and therefore you're stuck CADing stuff, but not everyone knows how to use CAD or solid modeling. And solid modeling in multicolor is more challenging than single color. So what the team at Mosaic, which Derek leads, the Canvas team has been working on, is a way to take a single color model, paint it digitally, and then print that. And that's what Canvas can do. So let's dive right into taking a look at that. And something kind of cool that also came out with Canvas is the ability to share. So what I was thinking is I'm actually going to share in the stream chat a link to the model that we'll be working on. And then if people want to play around and color that model as we're doing this, whether it be live or afterwards, they can do that. So I'm just going to go into Canvas here, and I'm going to share this model.
Screen share.
Wait, so the sharing, it's real time?
It won't be real time. Everyone will kind of get the blank model that I'm going to start with, and then they can color it, and then I can share the finished one again after. So it won't be real time.
Gotcha.
Give me 1 sec here. Okay, so this one is still painted. Actually,
Here's all while they're doing that, here's all the fancy insides. I tell you, the thing that strikes you the first time you grab it is just the heft behind the whole thing. I mean, it just must be good if it's that heavy, right?
I really enjoy the aesthetic of the whole product.
Oh, it's so clean.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeously designed and artistically just put out there. I love it.
Thank you very much. There has been a ton of people and effort behind the palette, and we're really proud of where it is today, and we're going to keep pushing that. Okay. Sorry? Oh, right. I need to share this on YouTube. If I share this in the chat here, would someone mind sharing it on my behalf?
Yep.
Do you guys see that?
Type something
Okay.
in the chat on YouTube, and we can share it out then too.
So I don't think I'm modded, Matt.
Give me 1 second, Pooch.
I just posted in the group chat if you see
You are
that.
now.
There we go.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
You got it.
There. So the link is in the chat. Sean posted it in there, and I think Pooch is posting it as well. If you click on that, you can go ahead and pull up the same model that Mitch is working on if you want to collar along, so to speak.
Perfect.
And you need to have
Okay.
a plugin, obviously, to jump on it.
Yes, exactly. If you don't have a Canvas account yet, you can make one for free. And then there's some presets depending on what printer you have. If your printer isn't listed as a preset, then you should be able to bring in a profile from Simplify 3D or Slicer and create a profile pretty quickly. That BB-8 model is actually going to be the second one we're going to work on. I want to start with a really simple one and kind of really show you the flow. You guys can all see the Canvas screen right now, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so let's actually start on Thingiverse. Where is Thingiverse? Here we go. So I thought the N64 logo would be a fun one. I think, all of us at some point in our life played with the console, and it's kind of an iconic logo. So this one's off Thingiverse from MDEDM. So if I go ahead and download that, and then I launch into Canvas here, I'm going to make a new project. So here's my workspace. I'm going to add the model in, which I did not actually download. Here we go. I'm going to bring in the N64 logo, and it's going to pop up there. And of course, it's a single color. If I wanted to go print that on my Prusa i3, then I could hit slice, and I'd be good to go. But let's turn this into something that looks closer to the actual logo from N64. To do that, I'm going to click on this. I'm actually going to rename it. Let's call it N64 logo. And then I'm going to hit Paint Selected. So we just launched into the Paint view here. And in this painting view, I have a few different tools. This first one is going to let me paint a single triangle like that. Sometimes that's really good for little details. This next one over here is a paintbrush. This is going to let me paint multiple triangles. Again, useful. And I can change the size of my head. So by making it really big, I can paint faster. One of my favorite is this paint bucket tool, kind of like in the old MS Paint. So what I can do is I can go in here and I can create regions. What it's doing is auto-segmenting the model to create different regions for me that I can then paint. So to try and make it look like the actual N64 logo, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to make this side green. Oh, sorry, I'm going to auto-segment. I wonder if I should go to, here we go. I'm going to make that part green, that part green, that part green, this part yellow. I think that one, that one, that one. And there we go. In literally like 30 seconds, we've now turned a single color STL into a 4-color one. I can save out and return here. And this guy is now ready to slice. I can do whatever I want with it. I can make it bigger, smaller, reposition it. I'm going to move this guy to the front of the bed for printing. I'll take the tower, put it behind so it sticks nicely. I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. And now I can slice. So what we just did is, again, took a model into Canvas, we painted it up, in this case using the paint bucket tool. And now what Canvas is doing is processing that model, taking the color which is on the surface, and it's creating tool paths which will print really nicely on the printer. Because in 3D printing, for anyone who's used multicolor printing before, you'll know when you have color on the surface of the model, it isn't just on the perimeter of the model. There needs to be a 3D toolpath that goes into the plane of the model. And that helps the extruder be more consistent in terms of flow, and it means that the part will be durable. So Canvas is now taking care of all of that automatically. No matter where you added the color, it's going to make sure that the toolpath will print nicely and look nicely.
So I got a question for you along those lines, because I'm curious, and I think a lot of people are. Is there an intelligence to the amount of depth it uses to apply the color based on what the model is? So for example, if something's like, 10 millimeters thick, it'll go 2 millimeters in, or is it always a certain depth?
Yeah, so for at least right now, it goes as far as it can. So it's trying to create as big of a region as possible to give it as much flow as possible and sort of give it that sort of like structural rigidity that it might need. So it's sort of finding the simple explanation, I guess, would be the middle of the model, that it's going to sort of try and create like a pie shape too. So if you have a circle, and I think we're going to do the BB-8 model here after, you'll actually see that it starts creating these almost like pie shapes into the center. And I think the circle is the easiest one. If you get to a rectangle, it's going to sort of create a line through the center. It's not actually going to go to the center of the rectangle. It's going to try and go sort of nearest neighbor type across it, if that makes sense.
I can't imagine the algorithm or whatever you had to figure out to do all that stuff, man. That's bananas. And when you're using that, is it the same for the paintbrush tool or the paint bucket? Like, is the logic basically the same? Or are you able to control depth at all, or,
Yeah, no. So we paint. So however you get that color onto the outside, if it's the paintbrush or the fill, the algorithm is just taking sort of like it's red or it's blue on the outside and doing its like magic to make that happen. So yeah, like you can paint however you'd like, and then it sort of does its thing.
So does it calculate the polygons, or does it calculate the faces or the surfaces?
So it's actually looking at each triangle specifically, so the polygons.
Okay.
So you are painting on a triangle level the parts, and then it's looking at that. So sort of the size of your triangle will detail or sort of describe the resolution of the color that you can create in your part.
Cool.
So yeah, and I guess it wouldn't be fair to not give a shout out to sort of, this was not an easy problem to solve.
Yeah.
We've worked on it ourselves for many years. This has sort of been in our minds for a while, but it actually took a collaboration with Kiss Slicer to make this happen. So it's us along with Kiss Slicer who sort of have this functionality. So yeah, give credit where credit is due. Yeah, we actually couldn't do this alone.
So that kind of was a question I was going to save towards the end after the demonstration, but that kind of answers that question a little bit. Canvas Slicer on the back end is using Kiss Slicer then to do like the heavy lifting of the slicing?
Yeah, for the most part. We've made some modifications ourselves to Kiss Slicer, but for the most part, it is very similar to Kiss Slicer. So things that you'd find in Kiss Slicer and settings or things that you'd expect there are similar to what you'd see in Canvas as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so right now it's been sliced, it's been sent back to my computer, and we are in the print preview. So let's start at the bottom here, and this is actually a really challenging region to actually think about how it would possibly be colored, because it's essentially a rectangular prism where the bottom is yellow, and then instantaneously the sides are all different colors, and they need to have an infinitely small thickness at the beginning. So you can see what it's done here. It made the bottom couple layers yellow, and then right away, it adds a single line. You can see right here on the sides, green and red. And then as it builds up, it's going to create that pattern into the part like Derek was saying. You can see the green is coming as far in as it can without stealing space from the blue or the red. And that way we're getting reasonably, as consistent extrusion as we possibly can. And then we come all the way up here, and it's sort of figuring out at a layer level the best thing it can be doing. And then right when we get to the top, we get back to that cap of yellow.
So I imagine part of the advantage of doing that way too is you're minimizing your amount of splices that have to happen if you're painting as big of a region as you can before you have to initiate another splice.
Yeah, that's true. So an example that comes to mind as you say that is that the traditional way that models will be broken up, and in fact, Derek has a video on YouTube, which is one of our most popular videos, is how to take a single color STL and break it up in Mesh Mixer. And not to hate on Mesh Mixer, because it is a very powerful tool. The way that that's done is really different than the way we're doing it. One thing it'll do is it'll create a 3D geometry into the part. And sometimes what will happen is it won't just go into the part, it'll go down into the part, and so it'll put colors on layers that aren't even seen on the outside. So palette or a dual extruder, whatever you're using, are going to create extra color changes for details that aren't seen, and that's just wasting time, wasting material. So yes, Canvas is not putting color or splicing anytime that you can't see the color.
And hey, Mitch, it's funny what you had just brought up. I'm going to hold this up here, and you're probably not going to be able to see it, but you can see, so this is blue on the outside, yellow here, but in between, there's red.
Okay.
So it did exactly what you said. It's putting colors in places, and I was watching it print, and I'm like, this is kind of weird how it's doing that, and why is that splice going there? Why is there red coming up at this point? But it's exactly what you just pointed out. So thank you for explaining that.
Of course. No, absolutely. And maybe just before, we want to jump into the BB-8 as a model that kind of really shows off the power of paint. But before jumping in there, just maybe talking for a second about kind of the vision, like why we decided to build Canvas. There's other slicers out there, In fact, for the first few years of Mosaic, we chose specifically not to build a slicer. We wanted to focus on being the best at one thing. And we made a software called Chroma, which is still very, very popular today. It works with Simplify 3D, Cura, Slicer, all of them as a post-processor. But we were trying to think about the future and what the experience needs to be like for multicolor printing to be adopted as the standard, so that a few years from now, when a printer is purchased, it'll kind of just be commonplace that a printer makes multicolor things. Kind of like today when, when us people who know 3D printing, when we meet someone on the street and they say, what do you do? And when we tell them that printers don't print in color, they're like, what? What are you talking about? It's such an expected feature. When we see a future where that is reality, where our kids are in school and they're using multicolor printers. And when we think about that future, we highly doubt that someone is using a slicer with a post-processor. And we highly doubt that people are only going to be able to create color content if they're masters in CAD or engineers. So we really wanted to push on making it simpler. It really, again, like I said before, bothered us that there's about 1 million free models out there, and less than 1,000 of them are multicolor. And trying to hire a bunch of expensive designers to try and convert them didn't seem like it was going to be the answer. So that's where Canvas comes in. And you can kind of start to see where these features are coming from. Painting was at the core of it to create more valuable content, but sharing is equally as important. Because if Derek spends an hour coloring or painting a big cathedral, it would be a real shame if someone in Kansas or someone in Japan needs to then spend an hour painting the same model digitally, only to then print it the same way. So kind of the virality and the value that comes from being able to paint that model, share it, and not have somebody to recreate that, we think that that's going to help convert those 1 million models to multicolor ones as fast as possible, and again, help with that adoption of multicolor. So that's really, I think it's important just to talk about like what's driving us, where's it all coming from? That's the way we see the future, and that's why we're doing this.
I'm totally dating myself by bringing this up, but it is absolutely analogous to like the 2D printing of like, you used to have the color ribbon cable that you had to swap out on the dot matrix. I don't know if this may be way before any of you guys' time, but and it was the same thing. Clip art was like black and white, and then people started to develop like color clip art, and so it's the same thing, just adding a whole other dimension now.
It's fine. That the ribbon cable you mentioned, we have no idea what that is, but we've been told that.
Yeah. At least in a printer.
Sorry, but now we've been told it so many times because of this analogy, because a lot of people see the parallel that you do. And in fact, I think we're dating ourselves now, but like 10 years from now, I think we're going to look back at this and feel even older, like laughing about how we were justifying color printing being the future. So, yeah, that's how these things go, I guess. Okay, yeah, what's up, Chris?
Yeah, so a couple of questions in the room. Coming from Gaston, the first question is, are there any tricks that you can do to save material? An example, print same color of all parts first to save changing colors in the same layer. And I'm pretty sure you guys do have a couple tricks up your sleeve regarding that, so.
Yeah, we do. So I guess to start off with that, most slicers, not just ours, do print all of the red, for example, before it goes on to yellow, before it goes on to blue. It's not like a 2D printer that sort of prints every line, and you'll have you'll switch between black, white, yellow, red as you go through the line. So you do end up printing all of one color, and then you go to the next color, and then the next color, and the next color. So one thing that, again, this isn't special to us, but one thing that we do in Canvas is that we will only transition 3 times on a layer. So you only switch from yellow to blue to green to red. And then on the next layer up, you'll continue to use red. And then you'll sort of print the end of the first layer in red, and then the starting of the second layer in red. So you only have 3 transitions rather than 4, even though you're printing in 4 colors. When you're printing with a single nozzle, with palettes or with any of the other sort of multi-material systems out on the market, you're going to end up having waste. Sometimes people call it a purge block. We call it a transition tower. And it's for it's a tower or a square or a cube that gets printed off to the side of a part. And it's a bit of a necessary evil in multicolor 3D printing at this point. It's not something that we love. I don't think anyone likes it, but they like the output, so they kind of stick with it. And that's where basically you'll have a little bit of bleeding between one color to the next. So you're having this implicit mixing that happens in your nozzle. And when it goes from, say, black to white, you're going to have a little bit of gray that happens. And you actually have to get rid of that somewhere so that your part stays cleanly black and cleanly white. And there's a couple of strategies that we use to make that happen less frequently. So again, that 3 transitions on a layer instead of 4 saves you sort of 25% of the material there. But you can also do things like putting that material inside the part. So you can use your infill to transition that material through. Sadly, Canvas doesn't actually have this functionality today, but we are actively working on that, and it should be out in a couple of months. Other things like being able to transition more for stronger colors or weaker colors, that's also coming. Yeah, so there's lots of different strategies that we have up our sleeves that will help to sort of minimize that transition waste and also make prints faster as well. Because not only are you using material, but you're also using print time when you're printing that transition tower.
The other question that Gaston had in the chat was about, he has his Profiles First printer tuned for Prusa Slicer, and he wanted to know if there was a way, or I'll add to that question a little bit, a plan to allow somebody to add color to a model and then export, say, individual STLs of each collar to then take into their slicer, slice it with their tuned profile, then I guess run back through Chroma, maybe?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we can't actually export STLs from Canvas. And that's not us being we didn't purposely do that. The functionality itself is actually baking in the colors when it's creating the G-code. So we don't create any STLs halfway through the process and then we're slicing STLs. And you'll actually see that the G-code parameters that you're putting into Canvas will affect the output that you get. So you'd actually get, if we were to create STLs out of the G-code, you'd get different STLs, but depending on the slicing parameters that are used. However, one thing that we actually do in Canvas is you're able to bring in INIs or FFF, so an INI from Slicer or a .FFF from Simplify 3D, and that will actually create a printer profile based off of your settings. And we do a little bit of conversion to make it look at least reasonably good for Canvas settings. You might have to do a little bit of tweaking and tuning, but at least it's a quick way of getting your settings from one slicer into Canvas, so you can get up and running pretty quick.
Okay. And we have Joel, before we get into the next demo, Joel asked a couple of questions. The first one was there any crazy fallout or weird comments from anyone in person after the release of the 21 palette video?
Honestly, I think everyone was pretty jazzed about it. I think people want to see us push it further and have them all talk to each other to make sure you can do 64 colors in calibration. But no, I think that was the first time that maybe the internet has just been nice for once, and everyone was happy to see something that was cool. Yeah, honestly, I think everyone was pretty positive about that. Maybe I have to go back and check the comments and see if anything else has come in, but at least in person, everyone's been pretty nice about it.
Yeah, and the quick sort of funnier backstory behind that is that Joel Telling was in Toronto to work with Derek and film a video about paint, and he came for like 3 or 4 days. Just figured we could spend some time together. We did a live panel, and a bunch of people near Toronto came out. It was wonderful. But day one, he got there and he's like, guys, he planted the seed. He's like, we should do a bunch of palettes into other palettes. And I was immediately like, sounds distracting. There's a lot of important stuff going on. He's like, okay. And then later he's talking to Derek. He's talking to our third co-founder, Chris. Then the next day we're all out for lunch. And guys, you know what we're doing? And he like built it up to a point where there was no saying no, and it happened. We didn't really plan. We just like scrounged around for pallets that were like, you know, endurance testing units and ones that were like lent to people. So the fact that we pulled that off with those pallets was crazy. But yeah, that was funny.
Any other? He asked, what's in the small room by the lobby that no one is allowed in?
Oh, wish I was fast enough to think of something funny. I'd be fired if I stole. So.
That's where the bodies are stored.
Yes.
Yeah, something that everyone will know all about when the time is right. But yeah.
Ooh. The plot thickens.
Rule number 1 is you don't talk about the room.
What room?
Pooch, do you want to ask the third question from Joel that you posted in the Hangout chat?
Joel's lucky he's not getting like blocked. He's just bombing the whole chat with questions here, but they're good questions. So, was there a hardware feature, gentlemen, on the Palette 2 Pro that you really, really wanted but had to be cut for time? Did we lose him?
No, we're
thinking. We're just
quiet reflection.
I'll talk about one while you think of another.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, so we have a lot of really great relationships with printer companies. They've been super supportive from early on. They said, you know, we build printers really well. We've been working on color. It's stupidly hard. If you guys get really, really good at this thing, we want to build it into the printer. And last summer, we announced that we are partnering with some of the best printer companies in the world to build Palette into it. So with Palette 2, originally we were building Palette 2 to be that unit that went inside. And so we were thinking it would just be this like piece of metal. It wouldn't look nice. And that was what the drawings were. We called it the OEM project. It wasn't called Palette 2, it was the OEM project. It was the OEM palette, where OEM stands for Original Equipment Manufacturer. And so right when you said that, like what, you know, was there anything that Palette 2 wasn't? That's the first thing that jumps to mind. So just to cap off that story there, what we ended up realizing is that if you build a product which is suitable for a consumer, as long as you don't add too much expense to that the product, it can also be used for that integration. Later this summer, one of those is going to be coming to market, which we're super excited about, and then shortly after a few others. But one day in the future, maybe a palette will really just be this tiny little module which gets put into the printer, kind of like how a computer chip goes into the, you know, into the experience of a PC. So that's my tidbit. Maybe for something more exciting from Derek.
I honestly not the most exciting. I think like if you look at Palette Plus to Palette 2, there was quite a few, like there was a step up in a lot of ways, at least on the hardware side. And I think we pulled out a lot of the stops to make it happen. The one thing that like I think we've been talking about forever, and this is small, but it's always sort of been out of the cost of a palette, unfortunately, is if you look at Palettes 2, there's little lights along the input of it. There's 4 colors. They flash when you when sort of like to guide you to load filament into the drives. As a fun thing, and maybe this is something that I get excited about, but I'm not sure if this sort of appeals to as many other people. But I really wanted those to be RGB LEDs. So when you were loading a specific color, they would flash that color. And you could do cool lighting effects. You could do a bunch of cool stuff with it. I'm pretty happy that we still have like that blue underglow that shows up with the lights, but it would have been even cooler if it was nice and rainbowy and like looks more like a gaming computer or something like that. But yeah, that was something that always got cut because RGB LED was maybe like 5 times the price of a regular LED, and
frivolous.
People already are complaining that palette is too expensive, and I understand that if you have a 3D printer that maybe costs less than your multicolor accessory, that so maybe the LEDs weren't that important, but. Who knows? Maybe let me know and we'll add it into the next one.
It's funny. Go ahead, Chris.
I like that idea a lot because I still get confused when it asks for the white filament on the screen. I don't see the white filament, so the white light would cement it for me.
I was gonna say it's funny that you say about that, Derek. Back at Murph on my rep box, I actually did on all the outputs of my rep box. I have colorimeters. So as the filament passes through, there's an RGB LED strip over top of the filament, and each row where there's a roll of filament will change to the color that's coming out of the rep box at the time.
Yeah, that was
So I used the splice feature of the palette and spliced together like 5 or 6 different collars in a strand, and then used that as the demo at Murph, that as I pulled it through and the filament changed colors, so did the lighting inside the box to match whatever was coming out of the box. So it's funny you say that because like I'm thinking the same thing. Like that would be really cool, especially I know there's people who use their palette to create multi-split or multi-color rolls for even more random transitions and stuff like that. And being able to see like that color changing as it comes out would be really neat.
Yeah.
That was a good setup. And what was super awesome about it, Matt, was like you didn't have it dialed in on the first day, and then like you and Ben Heck stayed up like overnight, and then came back the next day and it was working. Like,
well, Pooch, you do know parts showed up 2 days before Murph, right?
You know, in classic fashion. I love it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was literally slapped together. The Arduino was literally double-sided tape to the bottom of the box. And then Saturday night at Murph, me and Ben Heck stood there editing the Arduino code to fix some of the bugs that I had with it. Hopefully, when we get to Earth, I'll actually have that set up and printing at the Friday night booth to show that off a little bit.
I mean, that's 3D printing mood lighting. I love it.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Is that something that you might? So we are now the proud owner of 2 rep boxes. Alan generously shipped us the newest model, and that sounds like a great upgrade. Is that something that you're going to share with the community, or is it a personal project?
I'll probably end up putting together a parts list of everything that I had, because I mean,
That'd be sweet.
Buying the parts myself, I mean, that was close to almost $200 worth of hardware to get that up and running. Now, I also ordered it for as fast as possible because I ordered it the Monday before Murph. It showed up on Thursday, and I literally had one night to put it all together. So
yeah, but it looked real awesome.
Ways to get it.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I will end up having a parts list and everything for that when I get around to writing down everything and have the code uploaded and everything for it. So, do you guys want to go ahead and roll into your BB-8 demo?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay. So this is the link that we shared before. There we go. All right.
And I'm going to post. You said that is the same link, Mitch, that you shared before?
Correct. It is,
I'm
yes.
going to go ahead and post that in the chat again for anybody who wasn't here. So for everybody in the chat, you can go ahead and click the link that I just posted. That will actually load up the exact same model for you. So if you want to kind of paint along, so to speak, with Mitch and Derek, you can.
Awesome. Okay, so one of possibly the most iconic, would you call it an action figure or models, characters, robots?
Well, it's more recent though. Like R2D2, I guess, would be probably a little bit more iconic. But BB-8 is pretty cool with the orange and stuff. So,
and in all white, it just doesn't do it justice. So right before we jump in, just again to sort of explain why what we're doing is different. Derek, I know that you colored this model using Mesh Mixer a long time ago. What would you estimate that it would take to do this in Mesh Mixer? And then how fast do you think we could do this in Canvas?
Like most Mesh Mixer projects takes me probably like an afternoon, so a couple of hours, like 4 hours, 3 hours if I was actually like focused, maybe something like that, hours at least.
If focused. Okay. And I think we'll see with some of the new tools sort of how fast we can do this. So again, we're now in the project view. We've brought in the single STL. Over here, I didn't show this before. These are kind of your traditional things that you do with a model. So if I click the model, this one will let me move it around. I can rotate the model, scale the model, drop it to the bed, all the traditional things that you need to do. And then here, these are the different colors that I'm going to have eventually loaded into my palette. So I've already preset the colors to be the BB-8 colors. For example, if I wanted this to be blue, I can go and change that to blue, and then I can adjust the exact shade to match the filaments that I'm going to be using. So these are the 4 BB-8 colors. I'm going to click, and I'm going to go into Paint Selected so that we can actually paint this model. So again, we've got the different tools. One way that you could paint this, and this is how I tried to do it the first time, and it's not the smartest way, would be to come in here and to, using this paintbrush, actually go like this. And I can make the head different sizes. And I can take my time, and I can make sure that I'm getting all the right sort of triangles to color the right sections. And again, this might take a while, but once someone's done this, it can be shared and no one will have to do it again. But that's not the best way to do it, and Derek kind of showed me the best way to do it. So I'll actually let him take over here and show us what to do in Paint. So how would you do that faster than I just did?
All right, so you'll have to forgive me. I'm not used to using a trackpad. A mouse is much better for this sort of work, but Mitch has got me set up here on a MacBook. I'm a Windows user too, and that's making me cringe a little bit. But so we're actually going to create regions here. So we're pretty lucky that there's some nice boundaries in this model already that the algorithms can go through and sort of split apart or sort of create some edges that we can find nicely between. So let's just try the defaults for now and see how that does. That's looking pretty good. So you can see all these purple lines. We did this before. The fill bucket will fill all the way up to the purple line and sort of get you started without having to go through and paint each thing. So here, I can just show that there. So that didn't work so well. We're going to go through and change the settings so that we get a better edge here, so that I don't have to spend as long painting this. And let's just drop this a little bit. You know what you used before, Mitch? Yeah, something that worked pretty well.
3, and that was 15.
15?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, that's arguably worse. Sorry, this sometimes takes a little bit of trial and error, but once you get going, it makes it a lot faster.
That's okay. Perfect demos, are staged. This looks like the end user would be working through the things, trying to figure it out. So I think this is awesome to show the problem-solving side of it too.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we did this, right? So now we've got that region. That's pretty good. And that's looking good. Okay, perfect. So we're going to be actually a little strategic about this because I've done this before and I know for this model that it works, but you can, because of how the fill bucket works, it's going to fill everywhere that there's a purple boundary, or up to, if you turn the boundaries off, it will fill everything that's like the same color. So kind of like, yeah, we're going back to Microsoft Paint here. So if you drew sort of like a paintbrush circle, you could fill in that center. So what we're actually going to do is use that to our advantage. So we're going to use Create Regions and the Fill tool to make this super easy, or at least super quick. Maybe a little, this will be a little confusing for a couple of people, but hopefully not too bad. So we're actually going to do something weird, and I'm going to color this black just to save this as a region that's separate. And now you can see that these areas in the center here are completely just sort of islands in the middle. And that means that if I turn these purple boundaries off, I can go in and very quickly turn them both silver. And similarly, I'm going to turn Create Regions back on, and I'm going to turn this orange. But now you see that I have this border along here that's white. And if I turn that off, I can go in and click that, and there you go. So I now have the orange correct and the silver gray part correct. And if I just fill this back to white, I'm all done that region. And that was much faster than having to go in and paint every individual triangle, which is actually where all the time came with Mesh Mixer. Was really the hard part, was actually getting through and selecting each of those triangles. No,
But
Mitch is taking
that's
over.
still an option, right? So if you had a small little detail, you could go in and select a couple triangles to do a different color. Say if it was in like a face and you wanted
Yeah,
to do
for sure.
like a highlight on the nose or something in white, you could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm showing a pretty advanced sort of method of doing this quickly. Now Mitch is sort of back in and he's just doing it roughly to sort of get us somewhere so that we can end up slicing this and seeing how it looks. But
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun.
no, absolutely not. Yeah, you could definitely go in either with that sort of brush tool, the sphere tool that we call it, and the triangle tool to go in and get as much detail as you need, rather than sort of going through in this like large area. This is great for models like this that have a lot of sort of hard edges that the algorithm can kind of see as different. But especially if you're getting into like a character model or something like that, you might want to be a little bit more freeform, and that's where those tools come in. So yeah, I've given back the controls over here to Mitch, and he's just sort of
Going wild,
trying to rough everything in and get as much color in as possible.
Hey guys, while you're doing that, there's concern in the crowd that the pallet sale might end suddenly and people are going to miss their opportunity to buy. Can you comment on that?
Mitch, can you guys hear us? Uh-oh.
No comment.
That was a conversation.
A little bit about that.
You're like, oh, look at the time.
Doing the collaring and the live stream causing there was a little bit of lag in the desktop sharing. But it looks like we might have lost Mitch and Derek for a minute here till they figure it out. I'm gonna give me. Hey, they're back.
Hey.
I'm sorry, we were so busy painting, we had no idea that we were going to be on there.
Did you guys hear my question by chance?
No, sorry, we didn't.
Okay. I was saying there's some concern in the chat that the sale might be ending suddenly and they're going to miss their opportunity to buy a pallet. Can you guys comment on that?
Yeah, we basically keep on extending the sale because people keep telling us that they appreciate it. It's been going. We actually don't have, or I'm not even in the loop on when a hard date is. I can guarantee you it is not ending in the next 2 weeks. We had a sales meeting. I know that. Yeah, I hope that gives everyone enough confidence.
I think there's a couple people waiting for payday, so they just want to make sure it's not like tomorrow or, you know.
Yeah, no,
you're good at least till the end of the month, and we will be pretty good about publicizing when that's ending. So yeah, for those of you not in the know, that's we currently have $100 off of both the Pallet 2 and the Pallet 2 Pro. So yeah.
All right, so hey, I've got another question in the room.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get to a place where I need more granularity in the model mesh. Is there a way to take the model back to ZBrush to add more detail, then bring it back to Canvas without losing all of the colorization to that point?
Yeah, so I definitely hear you. Unfortunately, as of today, there is not. We are working on a lot of cool features that will either allow us to add some more detail, so like break apart triangles into more, be able to bring in something like a logo and actually use that to create new boundaries. So all I can say is stay tuned. It will only get better from here, but as of today, you're stuck with, unfortunately, the model that you bring in. But yeah, I'd say hang tight. We'll have more on the way.
Another question on the regions while you guys are doing that. Is there somewhere where it's documented like the impact that like what it means by face angle threshold or region angle? Because I've played with it to kind of see what result I get, but I'm not totally clear on what the manipulation of that actually means.
Yeah, no, and we understand that. we have some ideas on how to make that a little bit easier to use and more intuitive. So I'll try and give a quick explanation. I apologize in advance if this doesn't make a lot of sense. Sometimes I confuse myself, even trying to explain it to myself. But the face angle threshold is going to look between faces. So it's looking at the normals. You don't really have to think about that, but it's looking at sort of how the angle between two faces. So it's going to say, if it's past that angle, we should create a boundary there. So that's number one.
Like a sharp edge. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So, and then after that, that's gonna create the initial boundaries, and then it's gonna go through and group those based on angles between the faces. So in any one sort of grouping of a bunch of faces, it's going to lump them all together based on the region angle threshold. So all angles within a region need to be 20, in this case, I think what we have on the screen here is 25 degrees. So if there's a break that a group gets more than 25 degrees apart, then it will also break it there. And then the last one is minimum region size. And sometimes your faces are going to be so different that you're going to end up having a bunch of little small regions. And this will sort of continue increasing that region size until you get minimum 5 triangles in certain regions. So it will sort of keep expanding out to make sure that you don't have really, really tiny regions. Yeah, I know that that's not the best explanation, but we do have some, hopefully that helps a little bit. And then we do plan in the future to have those be a little bit more like, not necessarily presets, but have like 3 different granularities. You can always have the custom inputs, but maybe be able to choose from sort of presets that we know generally work for certain models.
I thought that was actually a really good explanation. I understood it. Honestly, I think you guys have done a good job of tooltipping most things. I just noticed it was like lacking right there, and I was just curious because it's so easy to play with and just kind of see the result. And you kind of have to do that anyway. Yeah, because it's not going to be really intuitive, like what angle you need for a specific model.
I'm also not 100% sure if the code has gone out yet, but we've made a couple of improvements there to be a little bit more accurate on models that have really sort of sharp corners, something that came out of CAD, for example. And it should be a bit faster too. So forgive me, it's a Friday night, and I haven't looked to see if that went out late last week or in the last couple of days, or if that's coming next week. But if you haven't already seen it, it should speed up a little bit and should handle things a little bit better. One comment actually from the chat that I was just seeing to address is somebody was saying that it looks a little laggy. And I'm realizing while I'm watching the YouTube stream in the screen capture that it looks laggy. I would recommend that you actually give it a try, especially if you're running a medium to a reasonable computer. It actually is pretty performant. So give it a try yourself. I think the frame rate that we're getting on the actual screen capture here on the feed is much lower than what we're seeing in person. So yeah.
And what may end up happening is with the screen share being a little bit choppy, that's YouTube and Hangouts interacting. On the replay of the stream, that may actually end up being a lot smoother.
Okay.
So that's something to keep in mind too. If you missed part of it or missed the beginning of the stream, the middle of the stream, go back probably midday tomorrow. YouTube should process the live stream and have the full stream uploaded. It may actually, one of the things we found is it looks a lot smoother on the replay than it does on the live stream.
Yeah, I mean, I can vouch, and honestly, everybody out there, it's free to create an account, and it's really kind of an addictive tool because, like, for the first time, you can take in any STL and kind of apply color really rapidly, and it's by no means perfect, but for a browser. First of all, as a developer, like a browser-based piece of software, it's incredibly performant, I think.
Yeah, so I actually, speaking of the browser-based side of things, one of the things that we've wanted to bring Paint to, and before you go out and try it, it doesn't work. But is touchscreen devices. So your tablets, when you pull out your iPad with your iPad Pencil or something like that, being actually able to paint on the model that way. By it being browser-based means that you can pull it up anywhere. So if you start working on something on your computer, you can pull up the exact same project on your tablet or something like that. And yeah, cloud it, yeah. And it will also be able to work on a phone as well. Because all the processing is done on a server, you can actually slice on your phone. So we're working actually right now, one of our developers is working on a mobile user interface that will fit much better on even like a 5-inch screen. We're trying to make it fit on the iPhone SE. Is that, again, wow. I'm an Android guy, but.
Are you guys doing a native app, or are you actually going to still use a browser on that?
Yeah, it'll be browser, at least right now. So it's working pretty well so far. I've seen some early versions of it, and I'm pretty excited to be able to get that out to everyone, because I could actually see slicing on my phone, which is crazy. But
you're going to destroy productivity in workplaces everywhere with this. I can see that causing problems. It's going to be on my annual review, I hate to say.
Minimize use of, yeah.
So actually, I guess another question from the chat there, Jay was asking about Canvas Paint, is it in beta? And I'd say, like, depending on if you put the beta flag on it or not, it's still early. It's new functionality. It's less than a month old, and it's improving. So both the slicing side and the actual, like, the engine side and the user interface will improve over time. We have some things that we're working on in the back end to make the quality of the prints better. Well, one thing that I will say is there's sometimes I've been like, oh, the engine, oh, why did it do that? Or it doesn't look very good when I print it. And then I go back and actually look at the model, and it did exactly what I painted. I just forgot a couple faces or something like that. I didn't zoom in close enough. So actually we're going to show you a printed BB-8 version. In the back, there's 2 triangles that that I actually missed the first time I painted it, and it's there. So these are pretty obvious. They're triangles, but sometimes the triangles can be a lot smaller and cause quality issues. But yeah, that being said, get in touch. I think I have found some tips and tricks around placing seams and other things that end up making prints look better with coloring. So it's as much dependent on how you color it and as your slicing settings, as the engine, that sort of all work together to make a nice print. So.
And just looking at the model that Mitch is holding up there, the BB-8, I mean, we just saw Mitch and Derek go back and forth and color BB-8 in, what, 15 minutes while talking and answering questions from the chat. I mean, there's models that I've been working on since January that I have yet to be able to make it multicolor because of errors in the model and things like that. That I do have a colored version of it in Canvas that really only took me maybe about an hour, and it was the very first thing that I started to play with Canvas with to begin with. But I mean, looking at that model that they're holding up there is a testament to what you can do in a short amount of time, and that's from having experience splitting models in the past. That's pretty amazing to me.
You know, speaking of that, one of the questions I had, guys, was, is there? You mentioned it is based on Kiss Slicer, or a fork of Kiss Slicer. Does that mean you guys have some auto repair tools built in? Is like if somebody brings in a model that's not fully manifold or has flip normals or something like that?
Yeah, so that's one thing I guess I would add. It works best when you've properly repaired your model, or your model is nicely watertight and it doesn't have a bunch of intersecting shells, that sort of thing. So if you don't know the quality of your model, maybe run it through Mesh Mixer or NetFab or 3D Builder or something like that before you bring it in. especially before you start painting for an hour and then you realize that there's a bunch of issues with the model. One thing that you can actually quickly do is you can like sometimes zoom in through the model in Canvas, and you can look to see if there's a bunch of like weird triangles going on inside. And like the engine will do its best to make sure that it doesn't screw up everything, but it's not particularly forgiving. I'd say some of the other slicers on the market do a little bit better job. So yeah, I'd say be a little bit careful, at least now in its current state. Thingiverse is getting better. I think everyone in 3D printing is getting better at making good models. But yeah, that being said, there's still a lot that float around that have issues. So
Johnny Olick asks, is there any student, teacher, or military discounts for the palette?
We have the latter two. We should probably have the first one. So we definitely have a teacher and a military discount. And if you are a student, reach out and we can help you out. So just by the way, that's not necessarily, there's nowhere on our website where you can enter that in. But when you go to the Mosaic website, right away in the bottom right, a little chat's going to pop up. And that's actually real people that we work with every day. If you message them, they'll respond as fast as they can. If you let them know that you are a member of the military or teacher or a student, they'll be able to create a PO for you directly and then work with you to get you the discount.
That's very cool. Will you guys have information about that available at IRF? I know one of the things IRF is shooting for is bringing more educators and students to the show. Will you guys have information at the show for them to make them aware of those discounts?
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, we should do a better job at. We should have a sign that says that. And thank you for your question. Yes, we can absolutely do that.
Okay, cool. There was a question in the chat from Twisted Dimensions. Does Canvas support changing hot end temperatures for different materials? And I believe he or she is asking as far as like mid print. Like one of the things I'll do in Simplify 3D with multiple processes is I may have like on my dual extruder printer, I might have say PETG in one side and PLA in the other side and be changing temperatures. Does Canvas support that for single nozzle, being able to actually increase and decrease temp mid print?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's probably one of the more hidden features in Canvas. And maybe if we can share a screen here, we'll actually be able to show you what we're doing. Because, yeah, as I said, not everyone knows about it. So here we go. Hopefully you can see that now. But yep. So yeah, maybe Mitch is going to open up a project here, and once that loads, there we go. I guess this is another painted model, maybe. But I don't know. Say the blue eyes here are a different material. So right now we have a bunch of PLAs and things that print pretty much at the same temperature and that sort of stuff. Other than the fact that I'm going to ruin Mitch's account, I'm going to go through and maybe let's add a PETG in here. And this is where you can add overrides. So anytime this material is being used, it will set these settings. So I'm going to click here, and you can do a bunch of different things. So print temperature, I think, is the one that we're asking about here. But say you wanted to print your PETG a little bit hotter. So we're going to go up to 230 degrees, say. You can do that. And, oh, I have to call it something other than that. Test P. And it shows up in the list here. And for blue, now that I have blue selected, I'm going to go and select that. So now I have this one, which is just the default PLA, and then we have the PETG down here. And you can confirm that this works by going up into your settings. And we're going to go down to temperature. And we're going to see a bit of a bug, but generally you would see this properly working, where you have the sort of temperature that's going to be used on default, and then the extruder that's being overrided to a different one. So I imagine that this is just a visualizer that you're going to get this, but if you actually end up slicing through, you'll get the blue 3 using 230. So there you go, and you can control a bunch of different things: filament diameter. You can change print speed that way. Retraction speed, I think. Yeah, there's about 8 or so different settings.
How would filament diameter work, given that the palette can only run 175?
Sure, yeah. So we're going to come back to here, but so that would be more if you measured your filament with calipers and you saw that it was actually 1.74 rather than 1.75, and you wanted to get it really accurate and get your extrusion perfect. I think this is more of a thing maybe like a couple of years ago when like filament manufacturers weren't that great at making 1.75 millimeter filament. This is less of a thing now. But the other thing too is that we do intend Canvas to be used not just by palette users. When it comes down to it, it's a slicer. You can bring in multicolor models or single color models into it and slice them and print them. So if you wanted to be using it as your single color slicer of choice for your LOL spot and you're printing in 3mm filament, 2.85mm filaments, have at her sort of thing. So yeah, that's I think the ultimate vision is that it's not just for palette. For right now, I think it was easier for us to develop something that was sort of for the users that we knew and the ones that we definitely want to support sort of first and foremost. But I don't see, there was no reason why it couldn't be for other people too. And especially if you're looking for something that is cloud-based, something that you can use across devices, maybe it's a good choice for you.
That's very cool. I actually wasn't even aware that it had the features that you just showed with the overrides and stuff. That's actually really useful for some of the stuff that I'd like to do with the palette. A question I had for you guys, when you both demonstrations that you did with the painting, right before you sliced them, I noticed you guys were drawing out the purge block, making it really skinny and long. Mm-hmm. Is there any particular reason for that, or was that more of just a personal preference type of thing?
I'd say, so I always do that. I'd say part pragmatic, part personal. A few factors. So one, depending on the block, if it's really dense, I find that a longer one for me will generally stick better. Everyone knows their printer and their kind of pseudoscience around that better. Another one is that sometimes we like to take photos of a print while it's printing, and I want to be careful that the tower isn't blocking a view that shows what's being printed. So I like to put the tower sort of long behind so it's almost like a backdrop. And now it's just kind of a habit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think also like maybe Mitch was doing it also to show the fact that you can do it. So you're not actually making the tower bigger or smaller when you're doing that. You're just stretching it out. But I think some people try to rotate the tower. And while you can't rotate the tower, you can switch it from sort of lengthwise to widthwise by scaling it. So yeah, I think there's a limit to how thin you'd want to go, because then it becomes very hard to get it to stick. But yeah, I think in the same way that if you make it a really dense square, you'll probably also have some sort of cooling problems where the inside's really warm and the outside's a little bit cooler, and it might warp a little bit more. Yeah.
RC Maniac 25 in the chat asked if there's any plans to update Chroma.
Yeah, so Chroma is definitely not going away anytime soon. It will be supported definitely with any future or like the next hardware release 100%, and I don't see why we wouldn't do it with the next one. And when I say the next hardware release, I mean something that might be coming later this year. I think we've teased it before, so I'm not making anything up. For those of you who are worried about buying a palette too, anything that we release this year will be fully upgradable to that model. So if that gives people any hints as to what that model could be like, sure. Maybe I'm saying too much at this point, but I'll stop. And yeah, so yeah, Chroma is definitely not going away anytime soon. I think we know that it's an important tool and that simplifies a great slicer, slicer's a great slicer, Cura is a great slicer, and they each have features that we can't build into Cura or can't build into Canvas. Too many C words, but yeah. So I think it's coming. It's gone to a point that it's pretty stable. I think you'll see more bug fixes than you will see feature additions. Because one thing that we found is as we add more to it, we end up breaking things. As we try and support so many different types and flavors of G code, it gets sort of messy when one printer or one sort of flavor expects to retract one way or Z-hawk before it retracts, and all these different sort of edge cases that we've gotten pretty good at. But yeah, bug fixes for sure will be coming. Stability improvements. I think we made a memory improvement in the last couple months. So yeah, by no means is it dead in our eyes. It still works. It does what it needs to do. And yeah, as the slicers change, I think we're going to try and keep up with it. But yeah, that's, I guess the one thing that I'm going to add here is the reason why we did go to Canvas is having control over a slicer has been so nice for us to do some of the things that we've really wanted to do. So painting, unfortunately, will never come to Chroma, or at least probably never. Sometimes I eat my own words on things, but it would be really hard for us to do something like painting in Chroma, where you're sort of at the liberty of what the slicer is doing, and going in and making huge changes to the G code is something that we don't really like to do. We find that reasonably unsafe. Whereas when we actually know all the settings that you're using, when we know everything that you sort of, the initial STL and what printer it's going to and that sort of thing, we can do a lot more fun things, and that's come in. So you'll definitely see more development there, and yeah, Chroma, definitely bug fixes, and if there's cool little features, easy things that we can add, definitely not a no. So yeah.
Cool. Chris, do you want to go ahead and ask Terry's question?
Let me unmute. Okay. Sorry if this was asked before, but is there a way to print a model rather than a purge block? I'm assuming that question is via using Canvas.
Yeah. So yeah, actually, if you there's so it's just not using Canvas. I will just give our community members a little bit of a plug. If you're using Prusa Slicer, and you don't have to be using a Prusa to use Prusa Slicer, but if you're using Prusa Slicer or I guess some Slicer P before that, there's a cool little post-processing utility that a couple of palette community members have built called P2PP. I think it's Palette 2 Post Processor or something like that, or somewhere like that. Yeah, P2PP. Awesome. Anyways, it's everywhere. So you can use their purge to model feature in Prusa Slicer with that for the palette. So you can do that today, and from everything I've seen online, it works pretty well. So recommend that, especially if you have a Prusa, but even if you don't, might be worth taking the plunge. That being said, and if you don't maybe want to set up P2PP, it is a little bit challenging. Like, you do need to know a little bit of code, or at least be willing to look at some text on a screen that might not be super user-friendly. If you're sort of a little bit more faint of heart and you want to stick to the Mosaic Canvas type ecosystem, we are 100% working on it. So that's to say it's not in there today, but very soon, well, soon at least, fairly soon, it will be coming. So all these transition improvements were sort of safe for after painting. And while we're still improving painting, a lot of the sort of the hardcore algorithm folks around Mosaic have now switched over to the transition optimization side. So yeah, if you sort of extrapolate that painting launched 3 weeks ago, they've been working on that for 3 weeks. Things take longer because they're hard, and we have to test them, but you can maybe sort of forecast out when that would be coming. But I don't want to give any firm commitments because I've been wrong in the past. I actually was very wrong on the painting side of things. I was telling people end of the summer, and that came out in June. So there you go.
Coming
Well,
soon.
it's better to be early than late, right?
Yeah. Managing expectations. I don't want to make anyone too excited and then miss it by a couple of months. I think the 3D printing community, and like Mosaic's no stranger to that, has always been, I think we're a pretty optimistic group. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, sometimes deadlines can make people unhappy. And yeah, so we will get it to you as soon as we possibly can.
Deadlines make me unhappy, for sure. Sometimes you don't get a choice, though. Chris, Practical Printing asks, is there any plans to be able to do firmware updates from the hub?
Yeah. So no, like, unfortunately, I think we've talked about that one for a while. I think we could do it, and we may revisit it in the future. But yeah, as of right now, we at least don't have it in development and don't have it on a roadmap anywhere. But it's on a wish list. So yeah, maybe we'll have to revisit that one. I think it might not be as hard as we think it is. So yeah. Stay tuned on that, but yeah, for right now, don't get your hopes up, I guess. But on
that note, new palettes come with firmware.
Yeah.
We wish that all palettes came with firmware, but there was a lot of development and feature improvement and bug fixing early on, so we decided that by the time palettes made their way overseas to people, that we wanted them to have the most up-to-date stuff. So new palettes do have firmware, and yeah, that will help with that.
One thing I can say, though, because there's 30 people or whatever watching this as a sneak peek, nobody else knows about this, but there is a firmware update coming probably next week. So a couple new features coming out to palette, some new, at least one new fun run out feature, some smart loading stuff that people might be excited. There's some feature updates to the Octoprint plugins as well. So expect that sort of midweek, I think. We're just sort of finishing our testing, doing a little bit more this weekend, and then we'll be pushing that out.
Okay. Eddie Moser was asking, so with the rumors of the next palette and the fact that whatever new features would be released on a new palette will be back compatible with the Palette 2 and Palette 2 Pro. Eddie Moser was asking if there's any cost associated with that, so to speak, upgrade for current owners. Will there be a discount for current Palette 2 owners on that upgrade?
Okay, so let me speak to the intention. The intention is to have anyone who owns a Palette 2 not feel in any way screwed. We want them to know that they should not need to buy a future product. And that's why Derek referenced the upgradability. That is an accessibility thing. We just basically want everyone who has a palette to feel like they made the right investment, they've gotten great use out of it, and now they can be brought right into the newest, latest, greatest technology kind of thing. So anything that's anything that we'd be shipping, of course, there would have to be an expense associated with it, but it's about upgradability. It's not about that's not what keeps Mosaic alive kind of thing. Would there be a discount for Palette 2 owners to buy whatever's coming out? Too early to say. Wouldn't want to make any promises, but yeah, accessibility is, if you take a look at what we've been doing, even the decision to try and bring the Palette 2 and the Palette 2 Pro, we want to make it as accessible as possible depending on sort of what demographic you're coming from and sort of what your needs are. So we'll do our best there.
Yeah, I guess to add to that, there's a couple things that I think this has gone on Facebook groups or on like different posts and that sort of thing. I guess just to reiterate it here, there will be a slight sort of firmware update associated with that, more visual rather than actual features, because a lot of the features will actually come to Palette 2 before the newer product later this year. But the upgrade will also happen in a hardware form, but unlike if you were a Palette to a Palette Plus user, that you actually have to send your device back to us, and we did it. This will not be that way. So it will be something that we can ship to you and you can do on your own. in your home and you don't have to do anything precise or calibrate anything or something like that. So yeah, should hopefully make everybody happy is our goal.
So
Cool.
I hate to rain on a party because this is very fun. Derek and I both have family in town this weekend, so that's the only pressure. It is 11:25 for us in Toronto. So let's maybe 10 more minutes or so. There's a few more questions, and again, if there's nothing in the way, then we'd love to hang out for a couple more hours. So sorry about that.
That's perfectly fine, Mitch. For those of you in the chat, if you do have any more questions, now's your chance to get them in. We'll so to speak, say last call for questions. Tag mcrispy1 or Friday 3D Printing Community Hangout, Repcord or Shenanigans in the chat, and we'll be sure to get your questions asked. Definitely don't want to overstay our welcome with Mosaic. They're kind enough to come on late at night and be our guests and answer some questions. From the panel, do you guys have any additional questions for Mosaic?
Yeah, 3mm. What's up with that?
Oh, I have an answer for you. So what do you mean? Let's dig into that. What do you mean 3mm? What are your?
So are you gonna be moving the palette into a 3mm range as well, to where you can print multicolor, multi-material with 3mm filament on like a Lulzbot or a Ultimaker?
Fair. Okay, so the first half of the question, yes, are we moving palette to 3mm? Kinda. Let me explain. We've been asked forever, Lulzbot, Big Rep, Ultimaker customers who want to print, and we looked at the viability of making a 3mm palette. I won't go into the weeds on it, but there's a few reasons that fundamentally it wouldn't be as efficient as a 175. There'd be a lot more waste. It'd be really challenging. So what we've instead done is worked with the support of Ultimaker and with some people that just own Lulzbots, and we've developed adapters. So on our website right now, and from some of our partners like Matter Hackers and Shop3D in Canada, you could actually get an adapter to turn your Ultimaker into a 175 filament printer. It's under $100. You can do it in under 10 minutes, and it lets your printer print really reliably with 175. The customers who are using it are saying that the quality is the exact same as 285. That means that you can then use palette. It also means that you can buy, all the different types of 175 filament that aren't available in 285. So that's gaining a lot of popularity. That actually just came out 3 weeks ago. The Lulzbot adapter has been out for a while longer. I'm actually going to just pull it up here real quick so you can take a look. But that's basically the answer, is that rather than building a 3mm palette, we're basically working with the printer companies, and if they don't want to work with us, just developing the adapter anyways to allow people to be using 285 printers with 175.
Yeah, Travis just implemented that on his Ultimaker, so it was a super easy upgrade or modification.
Yeah, I was just thinking because the filament diameter, is thicker, so it'd take more heat to, melt it together and cut it. It'd take something harder to cut it as well.
Plus, it doesn't bend as easily.
And it doesn't bend.
It would be bananas on that.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a different beast.
Kind of like what I was getting to. Sorry.
No, sorry. No, you're totally right.
So, hey, we have another question in the room from RC Maniac 25. Palette Plus owner who sent palette to Mosaic to get to P Plus, who is waiting for the next version and trying not to spam questions. Can that firmware get made OSS?
OSS? Open source software. Open source software, OSS. How tired am I?
So, short answer is no. Long answer is maybe one day. That's not that long of an answer, but there's some things that we're doing in the firmware that is sort of key to who we are as a company. We've gone after some patent protection around some of the things that we do. It gets really messy, and long story short, our lawyers would hate us. So I don't want to like necessarily pull the L word out, but yeah, our IP lawyer would basically strangle me, I think, and tell me that I was crazy. I understand that that's something that would be so helpful to or could be really helpful to the community, especially if you have supported us. And I really wish we could, but I'd say don't get your hopes up. And I apologize for that. In general, if there's something that we can do, maybe like LG related, that's where it's sort of more actively under development. We are always willing to like listen to feature requests and bug reports and that sort of thing. We definitely do try to listen and make adjustments. We have a team here who's willing to put in some time. So yeah.
Well, Derek,
yeah.
I was going to say, if you decide to open anything up there at all, or want to have a conversation, it sounds like RC Maniac 25, he's a dev himself, and he's got some ideas that he'd like to do with it. So it might be worth a conversation.
We are always open to conversations.
A question that I have, I'm watching the chat. We don't really have any more questions coming in.
Okay.
As far as social media, you guys had mentioned the social platform or social community built around the palette. And I know you were referencing Facebook, which was where a lot of the information about the P2PP plugin for or modification for Prusa Slicer is at. Do you want to tell everybody where they can kind of like follow the palette community or Mosaic community?
Yeah, for sure. So our probably most vibrant palette community is on Facebook. So I think Mitch might be looking for a link here, but it's if you search for Mosaic Palette Plus, Palette 2 users, there's a lot of people there. Honestly, it's like a pretty positive group of people. They share some really cool prints. I get a lot of energy from looking at that every day and getting motivated by what people are doing with it. So highly suggest giving that a try. I think also we have a short link, I think mm3d.co/FB or /Facebook. One or the other should get you there as well. So yeah, you can see some cool things that people have painted, people have printed with their palettes. And if you ever have questions or anything, there's great people there. I'm there. I think Mitch chimes in as well, and we have some great people on the Mosaic team who are actively there to engage with people. I'm not sure if Mitch is sharing the screen there, but there's a P2PP post pretty high, close to the top, talking about some features that were added there. So yeah, a pretty cool group. We're also on Instagram. We like to print pretty things. Follow us. We're at Mosaic MFG. Twitter, same, at Mosaic MFG. And we actually have a Twitter account just for things that are printed. If you're more of a Twitter user than you are an Instagram user, and that's Printed with Palette, at Printed with Palette, or Palette Printed. I don't know, one or the other. Maybe Mitch will look it up for me. Yeah.
And I did earlier in the chat, I posted the link to the BB-8 model as well that Mitch and Derek collared tonight.
Yes.
Pooch and I both posted a link to the Facebook group, and I also just posted a link to the Instagram account as well. And we'll have all the additional links for Mosaic as well as all our panelists down in the description. I'll get that stuff entered tonight after the stream's over. So if you're looking for where to follow Mosaic, where to follow our panel, you'll be able to do that. Give me about an hour after the stream ends, and I'll get the description filled in. So with that said, I don't see any more questions from the chat. Panel, do you guys have any more questions for the Mosaic crew?
No, let's let them go. It's late.
Okay. Go ahead, Mitch and Derek, tell everybody where they can find you guys, where they can find Mosaic, as well as anybody who's on the fence for purchasing a palette, that maybe tonight's conversation kicked them over the edge. Let them know where they can get it, how much they can get it for. Go ahead and plug your product.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. This has been fun, guys. Thank you for having us. Glad that we can show you kind of what Canvas can do and what people with palettes can now sort of do with it thanks to that. So, you know, everything that we've spoken about, there's tons of content here. You can see on my screen right now, this is mosaicmfg.com. Here you can learn a ton about palette. This bottom right corner here is this little chat. If you click that, and it's during sort of the regular day in Eastern time, Johnny or Addie or Manmeet or Chris will be there to chat with you, answer any questions that you have. If you're wondering about compatibility, if you click on this tab, you can see from the raised 3Ds to the Prusas to the MakerBots to the PrinterBots CR10s, a lot of printers that we're compatible with, and sort of a more comprehensive list attached. Lots of information about Palette 2. So there are 2 models. There is a limited time sale, as we mentioned. Palette 2 is $100 off for $499. Palette 2 Pro is $100 off for $699. Palette 2 Pro is aimed at more power users and professionals. It has a metal splice core, which lets it splice 20% faster. The warranty is 2 years long versus 1 year, and it comes with a bunch of extra spare parts. So depending on what your use case is and what type of user you are, totally up to you. Both the best products we've ever made, just a slightly different user and sort of come with slightly different things. Canvas, you can also access right here. You can create an account, use it for free, try out all the things we spoke about. We actually have a repository that we link of some of the models that people have already painted and wanted to share around. We'll do a better job of that in the future at sharing more of those. Anything I missed, Derek?
No, yeah, if you, like, we like to interact with people. Facebook's a great place to do that, but send us an email, support@mosaicmfg.com, or through the chat. We definitely love to hear your thoughts, and yeah, thanks for having us. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks, guys.
Yep, thank you, guys. Thanks for your time, and thanks for doing the demonstration and answering the questions from the chat. If you guys do have any additional questions for Mosaic, hit up their support on their website. Hit them up on Facebook. They're very active on Facebook as well for answering questions. And I'd like to say thank you from all of us on the panel at the Friday 3D Printing Community Hangout, and from everybody in the chat. Thank you, Derek and Mitch, for coming on and talking to us.
It's an honor. Thanks for having us,
much.
and we'd love to join again in the future. Hopefully we'll have some new stuff to share as well. Thank you all so much for taking the time, and we'll see everyone at IRF in person, if not sooner, right?
Yep, definitely. Yep. What is it, 84 days, Chris?
84 days.
All right.
84 days. It's going to be 83 days in just a couple, well, yeah, minutes.
Exactly.
Chris, go ahead, tell everybody about IRF, tell them where they can follow you, IRF, and everything else.
IRF on Twitter at IRF 2018. You can search at IRF 2018 or at IRF 2019 on Facebook. It'll either take you to our group page or to the event page. October 12th and 13th, 2019 at the Aberdeen Proving Grounds Federal Credit Union Arena. We're going to have the show again this year. We have just about 60 industry sponsors that are coming out. We're bringing in some educational groups. University of Maryland is going to be there. We have a high school robotics team from New Jersey, and we're also looking at bringing in some other local schools. It's going to be a great show. Twisted Dimension's going to be there doing full body 360-degree scans. Adrian Bowyer, of course, coming to do our keynote speech. 3D Printing Derby. And I don't want to forget Protopasta bringing mobile extrusion to the event. Eventbrite is where you get your tickets. IRF 2019 at eventbrite.com. Thank you all.
Thanks, Chris. Pooch, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you, and you're also an option for purchasing a pallet as well, correct?
Yeah, we actually are doing a bundle deal, which is awesome. So if you're in the market for a rep box, there is a pallet compatibility where you can put your pallet straight on top and feed directly into it. So go check out repcord.com for that if you're interested. And I'm on social media all the time, like I said, at Repcord, REPKORD, on all the things, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Awesome. Thanks, Pooch. And Sean.
Hello, my name is Sean. You can find me at ArtMods or ArtMods Official on everything, and that's my personal whatevers. And then you can also find me at PO Poly on all the social media. I'm a new community manager, but more importantly, I am a human like you. So love you all, and I will talk to you later.
All right, and that brings it back over to me. I'm Matt from How I Do It. You can find me on Twitter, twitter.com/countrycowboy. You can find me youtube.com/how I do it. And as of about a month and a half ago, howidoit.tv is my new website and blog as well. It's been a little bit lacking because of the hot weather and my day job, but I'm going to be getting some blog posts up there. I have one for automatic repetitive printing. If you're printing off, say, running a print farm, for how to eject prints off of your bed using the print head to ram into them, and some G-code scripting on how to do that. And there's going to be more coming to that as well. For the long-winded side of things here, for the Friday night 3D printing community hangouts, we're back. We just came off of our summer vacation from the streams. Again, thank you to Mosaic for being our first guest for the returning stream. Next week is going to be another US stream, which is going to be our first ever show and tell. If you have a project in the works, a completed project, if you have a technique that you'd like to show off for 3D printing, or if you have a product that's new to market or soon to be released to market, you can sign up for the show and tell by going to F3DPCH.com/show and tell. Fill out that form, and we're going to do that stream one time a month. We changed up the format a little bit here going forward after the break. Once a month, the US streams will have a guest with a topic, just like tonight we had Mosaic and the topic of Canvas Slicer and its new features. And then the other stream of the month is going to be a show and tell, where we're looking to get about 10 people to come on, spend about 10 to 15 minutes each talking about their project, product, whatever the case may be. And we'd love to see projects in the works that you can come back month to month to do updates on your project and the things you've learned along the way, answer a few questions from the chat. So if you have something to show off, if you want to show something off that maybe you're bringing to Earth and you're working on it now to get it ready for Earth, we'd love to have you on and spotlight a little bit of what the community is doing, and you actually get to come on stream on camera and talk about your project, answer questions from the panel, and answer questions from the chat. If you would like to be on the panel for the guest streams, please get in touch with us through Twitter, or you can email f3dpch@gmail.com to let us know that you're interested in being one of the panelists to ask questions of our guests. Those will be first come, first serve, and we're changing that a little bit. Instead of having, sometimes we've had like 7 to 10 panelists, we've limited that now down to myself and 3 to 4 other panelists. So that's kind of first come, first serve. First person to sign up gets to be on. And the only thing that we ask is that you be involved in the conversation, asking questions, paying attention to the chat, and asking questions from the chat as well. So to end this whole long-winded Friday night 3D printing community hangout update, next week we will be back again at 10 p.m. on Friday, July 26th with the very first ever show and tell. And we've got a lot of really cool, really big projects that are going to be shown off on that stream. So we can't wait to see you guys next week again. And one last time, I'd like to thank Mitch and Derek for joining us from Mosaic and talking about their new features. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night, all.
Good night.